Hello, and thanks all for being here. Let me do my quick introduction and then we'll get started and I'll sit down. If you find that it's too loud or not loud enough, please, raise a hand or something like that, but we're still getting adapted to the new environment. So hopefully the equipment is adjusted properly. So welcome, my name is Scott Pinsky. I'm the chair of the Marin Coalition. And for those of you who are here with us for the first time in Dominican, thanks for finding us. I hope parking wasn't too much of a challenge. And we hope you enjoy the location and the time and all the new stuff that we've done. You probably know that we've changed our means of presentation here a little bit by having the new location and the new time, which hopefully makes it more convenient and saves people some money, and hopefully that's good for everyone. Anyway, for those who are here for the first time and don't know, Marin Coalition is a 501c3 nonprofit community organization. We exist to create what we call conversations that matter on topics of interest to the Marin community. And this year marks our 50th anniversary. So we like to think we've made an impact here in the life of Marin over these decades. As you probably know, we're a volunteer board, and each of us on the board also supports the organization financially as well as through our board service, but we can't do it alone. So we hope that as you make your year-end donations, you'll consider supporting our cause as well. We're thankful for you, our community, and the audience for your support, both moral and financial, as well as all of your encouragement, feedback, but mostly we're thankful for your participation and attendance at our events. So let me take a moment. Is Stephen here yet? Okay, Stephen's not here. I want to introduce our board members. We have a new board member, Stephen Keys, who is signed up, so hopefully he will be here. And you might be able to meet him. Our other board members, let me just point out who's here. Kevin Haggerty, our vice chair, is over there. Our treasurer and secretary, Robin Keller. And our webmaster, Alan Shavitz. And Pat Randolph is over there in the back. So feel free to schmooze any of our board later on. Let me just say a couple things before we get started on today's program. We don't have dates yet for the 2025 programs, but we do have speakers lined up, and we're just narrowing down the schedule. So I think our first program is likely to be Mayor Kate Collin, who was just reelected, and she will be presenting with Brian Colbert, who is the newly elected supervisor on the Board of Supervisors. So the two of them will be combining forces and giving us their thoughts about what's going to be happening in the future. We'll give you the date as soon as we know it. All this will be on our website as soon as we've got it firmed up. We're also going to be presenting a program on the future of ranching in the West Marin Point Reyes National Seashore area. So look for that. And we're hoping to develop a program as well to talk about options for options for changes in the various systems of healthcare delivery in Marin County. That's still being developed. So look for announcements on all these, and as the weeks pass, and we'll be keeping the same timing and the same location, but obviously we'll give you those dates when we have them. So before we jump in, can we just make sure everybody's got their cell phones off, and then we'll get started. Today, it's our honor to hear from Derek Johnson. But
Scott?
Yes.
You want to remind people about the questionnaire?
Oh, thank you. Forgot that. So we have an email list, and I'm assuming many of you, if not all, are on that list. And we had sent out by email a questionnaire type survey that is just giving us some feedback about our new location, our events, and things of that sort. So if you did receive that, we'd appreciate it if you'd take a minute and give us your feedback on that. And Stephen Keys has just arrived. So there he is. Hello, say hi, Stephen, our newest board member. Okay, so today it's our honor to hear from Derek Johnson, the newly installed Marin County Chief Executive Officer, who this year succeeded longstanding top administrator Matthew Hymel, and he now administers a nearly $800 million budget and a workforce of more than 3,000 county employees. A native of Novato, Derek has over 25 years of experience in local government management, And before coming to Marin, he spent 12 years with the city of San Luis Obispo, serving as city manager, assistant city manager, and director of community development. During his tenure, he spearheaded significant infrastructure projects. He fostered financial stability, sustainability, and he led urban development initiatives that have left a lasting impact on that community. He's also served as director of the Office of Long Range Planning in Santa Barbara County and general manager of Parks and Recreation in Goleta, California. His expertise in infrastructure financing, redevelopment, and organizational development has been pivotal in fostering growth and resilience in the communities that he has served. He's now back on his home turf, and Derek has stated his commitment to serving the community where he spent his youth. He lists his priorities as including efforts to enhance the quality of life for all residents of Marin, promoting sustainable development, and ensuring equitable access to services. Derek holds a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from UC Santa Barbara and has a wide range of professional and academic experience in areas including housing and homelessness, climate sustainability, fiscal management, and equitable services. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Derek Johnson.
Well, thank you, Scott, and thank you so much for inviting me today. I love these kind of meetings. These are a great way for, in my role as a county leader, to really connect with community members. It's really where we need to stay in touch and learn about what's going on and what is the zeitgeist, so to speak, in the community, and also really continue to try to update our community on various different initiatives. As Scott mentioned, I've been fortunate enough to work in communities and coastal communities throughout California since leaving Marin County and back in the 1980s. You never really realize when you leave your hometown how special it is and how a special place it is in your heart. And it took me over 35 years to figure that out and find my way back to Marin County. And so it's been really a warm welcome from everyone since I arrived here back in April. My family followed suit, and so we landed in San Anselmo at this point. I got to admit, it was 100% driven by my high school daughter. She wanted to swim and play water polo. And so she wanted to go to school at Archie Williams that had one of the, but in her estimation, I don't want to offend anyone in the room, the best water polo and swimming team. So that's, that was really what drove the decision. But seriously, I'm really happy to be back here, exploring all of the stomping grounds and locations that I grew up with, and now to be able to share that with my family. So today's presentation, I'm going to just walk you through just some background and details about the county of Marin. I think it's always important to do some level setting. Not always clear where if people have a general civic understanding of what the county does versus cities or special districts or school districts. Sometimes the Byzantine framework that we have here in California can be confusing. So I think it's helpful to just do a little level setting. And I just want to admit, Scott warned me before I started my presentation that the digital gremlins followed me here to this meeting room. And so you're going to see some flickering as I'm doing the presentation. So I'll take some time to try to move through that as much as I can. So, really what I was asked to talk about today is, what is local government and how local government works in Marin County. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'll infuse as part of the presentation today a little bit about some of areas where hopefully I can provide some value and some input into the future of Marin County. And then of course at the end of the presentation I want to hear from you, and I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. So, it's just helpful to, as we were all just recently inundated, well, not so much in here in California, but, we had a national, state and local elections. And so it's always just helpful to do a reminder of the difference between federal, state and local government. So, on the federal side, they do everything from immigration law, of course, which is a big policy discussion at the presidential level, everything from laws concerning Social Security, civil rights, patent and copyright, and federal criminal laws. At our state level, we have statutes that are established for criminal law, designate how we marry and how we divorce, aspects of welfare code, wills, inheritance, business contracts, workers' compensation, kind of the big macro policy areas of how we administer the affairs of our state. At the local laws, and this is not a full exhaustive list, here's some examples that are maybe relevant. Rent laws, we saw that, feature in many of the local cities here in Marin County. We see zoning, where and what can be built. That is somewhat tempered by the state, because as you all know, and I was having a conversation earlier, is the state more and more and more is intruding in at the local level with housing mandates, requirements for building codes, requirements for infrastructure, how we do our transit systems, et cetera. And so in my career, and thank you, Scott, for mentioning the 25 years, I've seen just a slow kind of clawback of powers that were given to cities and counties back in the 1850s. And slowly that's been taken back to the state levels. Really, at the end of the day, we are, of the 58 counties, we are a subdivision of the state of California. So it is essentially a creature of the state constitution to essentially provide the 5 elected board of supervisors, and now under the structure today, the county executive to administer specific aspects of the affairs of the state and in turn local government here in Marin County. So here's some examples at the local level. You can see, where there's some differentiation. We had federal minimum wage currently stands at $7.25 an hour. When it pops back up, it's $16 an hour at the state level. The county has set a living wage, that's different than a minimum wage for all of our contractors and other specific issues related to municipal services at $18. And then here locally, city towns, they can set their local minimum wage. And for example, the town of Novato only has the authority to set the minimum wage within Novato borders. And you can see those ranges there, for example. And I just wanted to share that as a differentiation. So we have a fair amount of complexity of jurisdictions here in Marin County. It's probably, I would say, for a community of roughly 520 square miles, that's the land. The county that I came from was over 3,000 square miles. We had only 7 cities. We've got 11 cities here. We've got a network of school districts and special districts. There is a lot more complexity in government here in Marin County that I've experienced in both Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and my short time in Santa Cruz County. Nevertheless, these cities all have rich traditions and they all have city councils that have been empowered to address the municipal affairs within their jurisdictions. Primarily, many of these cities focused on land use, but way back when the state was formed and Marin County was one of the original counties, I think it was 28 that was originally established. Over time, cities incorporated, and the last one being where I'm from, the city of Novato, that incorporated because they wanted to have more control over their land use. Beyond that, in addition to supporting those cities, and I'll talk about that in just a moment, we have many unincorporated communities, and that's, a fairly comprehensive list here. And it covers a great expanse of Marin County, everywhere from the coastal communities of Tamales to some of the valley communities like San Geronimo and Woodacre, to the bay side of Black Point and Greenpoint, to other more urbanized areas like Marinwood and Marin City. So it's a vast array in terms of responsibilities, everything from open space and agricultural areas to areas that are along the 101 corridor. And so I think that is probably, a new challenge or a different challenge that perhaps some of the cities have that I just listed in that previous slide, but it's not too different from the counties that I've worked in the past. In Santa Barbara County, when I was in my role, I supported the unincorporated communities, for example, of the Santa Ynez Valley, if you're familiar with that, Los Alamos, the Cuyama Valley, and then all the way down to communities like Montecito and Summerlin, which were unincorporated communities as well. So in terms of, and I'm going to walk over here. Can you all still hear me if I walk away from the microphone?
I can get another right.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Scott.
Sure.
So inside, for example, the red line, this is just an example for the city of San Rafael. You can see who has the jurisdiction. So for example, your street city address, San Rafael, outside of the red line, San Rafael. Law enforcement in the city is the San Rafael Police Department. Outside of those red lines, it's the Marin County Sheriff's Department, and they provide law enforcement in addition to operating our county jail, and also they also are the coroner as well, so they provide additional functions. Roads within the city of San Rafael are maintained by the San Rafael Public Works outside in the unincorporated areas, with the exception of our state highways. That is done by County Public Works. Inside the city of San Rafael, the San Rafael Fire Department. Outside, we have a very effective Marin County Fire Department that includes the Office of Emergency Services, OEM. You probably got some, hopefully all of you were signed up for Marin Alert and got an alert after we felt the tremor up in Humboldt today. They quickly responded and sent out a lot of notices, and thank you for complying with those if you were in low-lying areas. And then last but not least, everyone's favorite topic, building planning permits within the city. That's done by the City of San Rafael Planning Department. If you're in the county, you're through the Community Development Agency. There we go. So this was a little bit of a mystery. I mentioned to you that, I live off Sir Francis Drake in San Anselmo, and I was a little scratching my head as I was driving down the road. Of course, keeping my eyes on what's in front of me. Why was the pavement, good, bad, as I drove down the road? And so it's a little bit of a mystery. And so I'm hopefully going to demystify that a little bit. So, the questions up here is, why does the pavement on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard change from nice to not nice and nice and not again as I drive from Larkspur, Green Bay, Kentfield, San Anselmo, and Fairfax? And that's because it goes through many different jurisdictions. And so, for example, you probably read in the Marin Independent Journal that Larkspur has, I think, the highest pavement management index in the county, upwards of 70%. And then you drive down the road and you get to Fairfax and it's in the low 50s. So it's on its way to going feral again if we don't pay attention to those roads. But jokes aside, that can make for some frustration. I know for the community, because at the end of the day, the public doesn't really care, or they shouldn't have to care at the end of the day. They should just get the roads paved because that's what you pay the taxes for. So that is something that I'm hoping to have better coordination on in the future, so that when we're undertaking a roadway project, that we're coordinating with our friends in San Rafael or San Anselmo or wherever it may be, and trying to use and leverage and stretch our dollars the best way that we can. So moving down, I talk a little bit about, this is probably one of the most interesting intersections of the last redistricting, and I failed to do something at the outset. I forgot to introduce Talia from my office. And Talia said she is our Director of Legislative Affairs. She is a fantastic resource and conduit to both our federal and state legislators, in addition to being a great conduit to our other county and school district partners. She is a fantastic resource. So I just gave you a sampling of a little bit of the complexity of government. If you really want someone who's a decoder, in that world, Talia is your person. She is just a whiz at finding bills and then tracking down the facts and things that are coming down the pipeline or things that are coming in the future. But that being said, getting back to the presentation, in 2020, we did a redistricting. And this is helpful to point out in terms of where the county supervisor districts overlap, for example, with the city of San Rafael. So we've got the first, second, and fourth districts. So just to orient you, so the fourth district, Dennis Rodoni's district, President Rodoni, his district extends down to the Canal District. You've got Supervisor Rice, now Supervisor-elect Colbert, in the second district that covers another part. And then you have incoming President-elect Mary Sackett in District 1 in the northern part. So you can see, in some cases you have multiple supervisorial districts overlapping with a city. And so, as you can imagine, when there's complex policy issues that happen within those cities, one of the examples most recently, I think, was the bus depot down in San Rafael. There was an intersection of a lot of interests, including our board of supervisors and the entire city council of San Rafael. So some other areas I think it's important to point out and just kind of going a little bit deeper on municipal services. So in terms of what the county provides, so municipal level services that we provide, the sheriff that essentially serves as our quasi police department, our planning and development, our community development agency. We have a fire department that is a full service fire department. And I gotta say, it's one of the best fire departments that I've had the pleasure of working with. You may have heard that the board made some significant investments in the last year with our Office of Emergency Management. All of the text that you got today happened because there was a talented group of men and women who were on the ball today when those alerts came out and got information out to people as quick as they could. We also provide library services in many of the unincorporated areas and in some incorporated areas like Novato. We provide regional parks. So where I grew up out near Stafford Lake, you may have read about, I think in the last couple of days, or was it in this morning's paper, about Roy's Redwood Preserve. I grew up running around those redwood trees when I was a kid, and it was great to see nearly $4 million of investments that were just made to make sure that those redwoods are there for the next generation. And then last but not least, our public works department that does everything from flood control to roads, to bridges, to building maintenance, to maintaining our fleet. On the county-wide services, what do we do to support the rest of the organization? First, starting with my department, Office of County Executive, we're here to serve and coordinate the rest of the organization. We have our Health and Human Services department that is nearly a $250 million or over a $250 million a year organization that provides everything from behavioral health, social services, and public health. So you probably got to know many of those folks during the pandemic. They were essentially the tip of the spear in responding to the COVID-19 crisis. And then I'll move through the list quickly. Our district attorney, which is an elected official, our public defender, who I have the pleasure of appointing and overseeing, probation, our chief probation officer, Chief Washington. In the next two, we have electeds. So we've got Sheriff Scardina, who oversees the jail and coroner. And then we have Shelley Scott, who serves as our assessor recorder. And here we go. It's continuing. Let's see if I push the button here if anything happens.
Nothing's gonna happen.
Okay. Nothing's happening.
This decided to go completely off.
All right, there we go. And then we've got, I'll run through the list, elections, weights and measures, and other services, child support services. So this is really the framework for, that's been largely dictated by the state of California. One thing that I am proud of in this county is the Health and Human Services. Unlike the counties that I came from, we provide a significant amount of general fund funding to bolster the services in a way to take care of our most frail, particularly many of our older adults. So you can see our county has a fair amount in addition to the complexity of county and state lands. This is just a showing of the federal lands, state parks, other jurisdictions. And so I also interface with individuals, whether they're park superintendents through Golden Gate National Park area or Muir Woods, so there's those players as well that give some complexity to Marin County. So how are we funded? And in the state, this is fairly typical for a county. Most of our funding comes in the form of property tax. In cities, that second part of the pie chart there, sales tax, it shows 1%. The city that I just came from, it's about 30%. So, really their bread and butter is, auto malls and shopping malls and, people spending funding. And then you can see, there's a smitten of other revenues. We've received a fair amount of grant and aids for social services, federal grants and aids. This bottom part of the pie chart is largely to fund our health and human services. So that nearly $280 million of services that we provide. And then we receive some portion of funding for as service fees. There we go. So as it was mentioned by Scott at the outset, it's a over $800 million budget that we see about a 5% growth rate on an annualized basis in terms of our revenues and expenditures. You can see, and I went through the revenues on the last slide, so I won't go through those again. We spend nearly about $500 million a year in salaries and benefits for our nearly 3,000 employees, $250 million in services and supplies, everything from our partnership with nonprofits, et cetera, to provide services. We provide direct support to clients, and that's essentially a pass-through. We have ways that we recover many of our charges. So if you are a federal or state program, we want to make sure that those programs are not being subsidized by local taxes. And so we recover some of those through departmental charges. And then lastly, about $11 million a year in capital assets. And I would say in my time here, and you're going to be seeing something come to the Board of Supervisors here soon, is we need to make up a lot of ground in our capital assets, our roads, our bridges, our buildings, such as the Civic Center. The Civic Center alone, I guess the estimate is over $100 million in deferred maintenance in that building alone. And so we're going to need to see that number change in the future if we're going to keep up with the needs of our community. I won't spend too much time. This is just a further breakdown in terms of those expenditures. I talked about nearly that $280 million for health and human services. The next biggest category is public safety. So that's our sheriff and our fire department and probation and district attorney and public defender. And then it takes a fair amount to administer all of this, our administrative and finance department. We spend nearly $100 million on community development in that category. That includes public works as well. And then we have a variety of community services, everything from elections to parks to various different programs. So the type of taxes that fund local government. So many of you know property tax. I think property taxes are due any day now. I just bought a home, so I got my supplemental tax in addition to my regular tax. So so that is essentially based upon a formula established back in 1976, Prop 13, essentially frozen in time. From that year that was essentially established your base year, and then a max increase of 2% per year based upon the total value. There's some other charges that are in there, parcel taxes that you see. I got my tax bill, and I think it started with the property tax, and I think there was about 20 different lines underneath that. Everything from community colleges to wildfire protection. The list got pretty long by the time I got to the total amount. And so that's just, you all know that. In terms of sales tax, and just to give you a variety of what the rates look like here in Marin County, we have a range in the unincorporated area at 8.25%, all the way up to 9.25% in some of the incorporated areas. And those are typically the areas where you see more transactional activities. So your shopping malls, your car areas, you'll see cities, typically go to the voters, and the voters will approve those for a duration to support specific initiatives. In terms of where does your $1 of property tax go? And so this is always helpful in terms of understanding. If you live in the unincorporated San Rafael, roughly about 65 cents of that goes to school, 32 cents goes to the county of Marin, and then it's split up amongst various other agencies. If you're within the unincorporated San Rafael area, again, that same amount, and this is all prescriptive. What's the bill on that, Tanya? It's the school is at Prop. This is essentially Prop 98 that goes directly to schools. And you can see a share that goes to the county and to the city of San Rafael, and then that last blue part of the bar that goes to the other agencies. Where does your 1% of sales tax go? 43%, 43 cents goes to the state, 25 cents goes to the county of Marin. In the city of San Rafael, it's about the same at 22 cents, and then it's split up amongst other agencies throughout the state of California, throughout both locally and throughout the state. So who are your supervisors? And we made a little bit of a mistake here. Sorry about that. So we have Supervisor Sackett in the 1st district. Supervisor-elect Colbert is coming into the 2nd district. Stephanie Moulton Peters is your 3rd district supervisor. President Rodoni represents the majority land area of Marin County in District 4, and then we have our friend Supervisor Lucan in District 5. What are the board's priorities? And so I'd say this is one of the reasons that attracted me here to Marin County, because it largely aligned with the organization that I came with and the priorities that were established in the city of San Luis Obispo. The first is affordable housing and homelessness. And I'm happy to answer some questions about homelessness. Race equity, the board is very focused on making adjustments to the inequities here in Marin County through our racial equity action plan. We have a fair amount of work to do on climate change, whether it's adaptation and resilience. And so we have various different studies underway, and I'll talk about those in a moment. Disaster preparedness, county infrastructure, and then, as we saw as an outgrowth of the Great Reshuffle, we have a fair need to look at county recruitment and retention. So moving through, what is underneath all of these priorities in terms of affordable housing, we continue to have funding available for emergency assistance. Tenant protections, what that looks like, I don't quite know. We're still studying that right now. Preservation of our existing affordable housing stock. So many of the affordable housing units that we have, they are not affordable in perpetuity. Many of them come with various different deeds and covenants. Most of them are 55 years, some are 30 years or less. And so we monitor those closely to make sure that those don't expire, because the best thing we can do is preserve the affordable housing stock that we have already. As I talked about at the outset, there is a huge push by the state of California for new affordable housing. Whether you agree with it or not, it is the mandate of the state. And so we've had to make provisions in our housing element to zone and provide for affordable housing. You may have heard of many of these projects in and happening around the county, whether it's the 825 Drake down in Marin City, a project that's currently moving through the phases in Marinwood. There's the seminary project down in Strawberry. We have a variety of different housing projects that are moving forward because the state required the county of Marin to provide enough zoning capacity for those projects to move forward through the entitlement phase. And as I mentioned at the outset, the state largely stripped most of the discretion, I would say most of the discretion from the county in terms of our review and approval. Our board has made some commitments, nearly $49 million towards affordable housing initiatives through a variety of different funding sources, because we want to move forward with those housing projects, because the state has made it clear that there could be consequences here locally as a result of not doing so. In June of 2023, the state did accept our housing element. Many of you may have seen that there was a court challenge that was brought to that housing element. The judge did make some findings, and we're in the process right now of addressing those court's findings, and we'll be back in front of the Board of Supervisors here in the next few months to address the court's findings, and also at the same time remain compliant with HCD, or the Housing and Community Development. We also have other efforts underway, the Marin Housing Authority and the rehabilitation of the Golden Gate Village. And then many of you may know about the Oak Hill Housing and Development Project, which is a project in partnership with the state of California and Marin County Office of Education to build nearly 200 affordable units for teachers in our county, which is sorely needed. So in terms of our homeless efforts, the county has adopted some best practices, and I know that this can be frustrating for the community, but nevertheless, it is a data-driven best practice in producing the best outcomes. We have, in terms of housing people first, it's in the last 5 years, from 2017 to 2022, we housed nearly 2,000 individuals and brought them out of homelessness. The gremlins are still working really hard back there, really hard.
And he doesn't want to come back up.
Now it's really on strike here. This is the second time this happened to me this week, not in this room, but happened to me earlier this week, and I was able to ad lib, but is it coming? Is there anything coming up there?
No, unfortunately.
Is the presentation coming up at all?
Stop sharing. Stop sharing.
Thank you for your patience. We'll try to get this sorted out here.
There we go. There we go.
Okay, all right, here we go. I'll say, so we have made a fair amount of progress. 800 chronically homeless have been housed, 100 veterans. Today, one of the proud facts that I am able to share is that we have effectively 0 veteran homelessness in the county of Marin, which is a fantastic accomplishment. It's going to be a continued effort. Our Homeward Bound project that's just opening off of Highway 101 in Novato is the reason we're able to do that. Really proud of joining an organization that's been able to accomplish that. And to round out, we have 2 home key projects, roughly 90 housing units throughout the county. All right. I'd do a dance, but it'd be a little awkward.
Right.
I can juggle, but
Try it again. No. Just lost.
okay. I'm gonna run through these so we can stop the pain. So in terms of our racial equity goals, we are focusing on economic opportunities, mental health. We have $2.5 million in participatory budgeting, really trying to allocate fundings to roughly 3,600 community members in and around the county.
I just need to read from the laptop.
Yeah, maybe just
No, I don't.
Here you go.
There we go.
okay, I'm gonna talk fast here, so, and we'll just go move on to the next slide here. I'll just get through this so we can move on to some questions.
You moved it forward.
All right. There we go. Sea level, in terms of climate change, we have a sea level rise, effort underway. This is going to need to be a significant, effort to address both immediate concerns about sea level rise, both on the bay and the coastal side. So, if you're familiar with Highway 1, Highway 1 in the Bolinas area is very threatened by sea level rise. There's areas throughout, the 101 corridor, particularly in Mill Valley, Corte Madera, in Novato, Marin Keys. So some significant efforts and planning efforts are going to need to be undertaken to address those issues, which are those planning efforts need to happen now so we can make the investments in time to address, the projections. We have a fair amount of wetland restoration, and then we do understand that unfortunately in Marin County, the disparities are felt by those who are most marginalized and disadvantaged. And so we're undertaking an effort to figure out how do we make sure that our efforts and investments are most equitable. In terms of disaster preparedness, we have a new fire dispatch program. So we moved the dispatch program from the sheriff's department to the fire department. That has been a transformative effort. And I would say, some of the results you saw today. We have built a state-of-the-art emergency command center over at Los Gamos. So I had the chance to, when I first arrived, to cut the ribbon on that project. And so we now have 10 men and women who are there 24/7, and we're able to activate, a state-of-the-art emergency response center, or should we see fire, floods, or a variety of hazards. We have established community resilience teams throughout the county. We're in the process of doing a pilot program in San Anselmo and Ross. A new operation. Okay, and so in addition to, I want to talk about our county infrastructure. I mentioned just the $100 million alone for the Civic Center, $200 million plus deferred maintenance throughout the county. If you live in Central Marin, you ever drive over the Bofax Road, that I think that estimate, what does that tell you? Nearly about $40 million to bring that road back into acceptable condition. We've got the seismic retrofitting efforts underway at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium. We went in to do some earthquake retrofits because that building was sinking into the bay. And then when we unpacked it, we realized that there was a lot of other infrastructure that was being impacted, both the drainage systems and electrical systems. And so that project right now is nearly about $15 million and climbing. And I want to make sure that when we reopen that facility, people understand what they got for their money. So we're taking a long look at, beyond just the bare bones and structural integrity of the building. Are we also going to look at the finishes and experiences and the AV and other equipment to make sure that we're paying it forward to the next generation?
Maybe permanent.
All right, we may have hit critical failure here on the slide deck. Okay, here we go. All right, in other county infrastructure, the West Marin Collector Road Seal project, you saw a fair amount of roadway views out in West Marin. I think we did a fair amount of road work out there this last year. May have read about the Army Corps of Engineers partnership to address some pernicious flooding that happens down in Marin City that has had some pretty huge consequences on Highway 101 dating back to when I was a kid. I think there was a big snarl, what was it, back in 2021 that sent traffic all the way backed up to Santa Rosa. And as I mentioned, our progress in pavement condition index, and that's something I am focused on here in our county. When I was in San Luis Obispo, when I started, I started with a pavement management index in the low 60s. When I left, it was approaching 80. So we saw some really huge increases, and I know our community appreciated it. I'm trying different ways. We'll see if I can. All right, last, I think we're getting to the end here. So the county cannot provide services without people. We are a people serving people organization. Nearly 40% of our workforce has turned over in the last 5 years. So everyone knew about the silver tsunami, we knew it was gonna come, and it came, and now we've got some big investments we need to make for people who are joining public service. And so I've been having conversations with the board of supervisors about developing, and Scott mentioned it as part of my background in doing some organizational development work to make sure we have the right workforce with the right attitude and the right aptitude to serve Marin County. We have reduced our vacancy rate. This slide says 11%. The latest numbers that I got are just a little over 8% countywide, so we're making progress. I do have labor negotiations coming this year with all of my bargaining groups, and so I do anticipate that compensation is going to be on the table. Unfortunately, I think Marin is in the position to be doing something that's financially responsible and at the same time remain competitive so that we can attract people into public service. So many of you probably heard about, well, there's a new county executive and he's decided he wants to undertake some organizational assessments. And so I wanted to address this and why they are important. As you see, as you saw, we spend nearly $1 billion a year. Spending nearly $500,000 on the first 3 departments to making sure that they're effective and efficient and delivering the outcomes in the 21st century is very important. I would say Marin County is known for doing a lot of really great things, and we've done these great things the same way for quite a long time. And if we're going to tackle all of those challenges that I pointed out as part of my slide deck, we're going to need to make adjustments that we're doing them the most effective way possible. So how many people here shop on Amazon? Show hands. Okay, show hands. All right. So most of you in your raised your hands. How much would equate your experience on Amazon to when you engaged with the county of Marin in terms of digital services? Or do they feel the same? They don't. There's a vastly different experience, and it shouldn't be that way. So you should be able to pay your permit fees online. You should be able to submit your applications online. You should be able to do a lot of things online from a click of a button. But that's not what we've made investments in. And so these studies are really designed to get at how can we be more efficient and effective with the nearly $1 billion that we're spending. So I know it seems like a lot of money, but if I can save 1%, efficiency out of $1 billion per year, these will quickly start to pay back. And I'm very confident that I've done this in the past, that we will see these efficiencies, and there'll be ways for us to digitize services and ways that we can't imagine them today. On top of that, all of you have heard about AI, and we see the emergence of AI as potential possibilities for automating things that computers can do and then leaving the people work to be done by people. And so that is going to be some of this work here. And most importantly, and many of you probably caught, and the Marin Housing Authority doesn't technically report to me, but you probably saw that they were defrauded of nearly $1 million. And so my hope is through these types of organizational assessments, I can look at everything from security to IT services to the checks and balances to make sure that the public's resources are being safeguarded in the most proficient and efficient and effective way. So with that, I think I always like to call end as I get close to the end of the presentations with a call for service. All of you may have time on your hands, and we have nearly 55 committees and commissions in which you can serve in your county that you love in a variety of different ways, whether it's on the Women's Commission, or if you want to be on the Planning Commission, or if you want to be on the Conservancy for the Marin Civic Center. There is just a variety of different ways that you can serve the county that I love, and I know that you all love, and give back to the people into the future. So I think that's either the end of the slides or the end of the computer, one of the two. We'll just go with the end of the presentation just to, end the presentation. And so with that, Scott, I don't know if I'm gonna turn it back to you and we can take some questions.
That's great. Why don't we? Thank you, Barrett. How about the Dominican Audio Visual Commission?
Yes.
All right, boy, that was a lot. Let me just mention too. The program is being recorded, and I know most of you memorized all of the statistics you just saw. But if you forgot one or two, when you go online to our website and look on the archive page, you'll be able to see this entire presentation probably tomorrow or the day after. And you can watch it all again, and you can slow it down and look at the slides, because the whole program will be in the audio visual recreation that Alan is going to give us on the website. So marincoalition.org, and then you look for archives, and then it'll be the first one chronologically on that list. And by the way, all of our prior programs are on there too. So if you want to search for someone that you know spoke to us 3 years ago, 5 years ago, that recording should be available to you too. And it's all free. So just one of the things that we do. All right, let's get some questions. I'll bring the mic over. We have one over here.
Hi, thank you, Derek. Welcome to Marin. My name is Madeline Kellner. I'm from Novato, and I noticed that over the last year or so, the Planning Commission, the County Planning Commission, there's been some concern about whether people are sitting there, are they able to really influence decisions and just their whole role. And as a former planning commissioner myself from Novato and also former council member, I look at that and I think, when you get people to volunteer, they want to feel like they're making a difference. So I'm wondering, since you picked the community development department as one of your 3 areas to look at, if in that process review, you're going to look at not only the department itself, but the role of the commission.
Thank you for that question. That's really relevant. I've been having some of these conversations with some of the commissioners. And I will share you what I think when the relationship is optimized between staff and the planning commission. The planning commission is really the thought partner, leading thought engine, so to speak, on bringing and helping advance policies in the vision for the community. And I think that there is, at least from the comments that many of you probably read about in the paper, I think that there is some genuine frustration that we're not using the skills and expertise of the commission in a way to really shape the policies in an effective way. And so my hope is through this assessment process is to be able to re-engineer and take a look at how do we really provide meaningful and timely direction and input from the commission that best incorporates the communities that they represent.
While we're waiting for the next question, I should also introduce my predecessor, Susan Kirsch, who was the chair of the board of the Marin Coalition for many years. Thank you for coming and seeing us again. And she probably is on those videos that I just mentioned.
I'm Stephen Keyes from Fairfax. We're dealing with the homeless problem right now. And one of the issues we're running into is that there are a lot of mental ill people involved in that community, and they're not getting the services that they need. And the second is that we have some who are basically addicted, who don't want to move into housing because they'd be cut off from their narcotics or whatever it is that they want. And I wondered what sort of thinking you have that might address those two issues.
Thank you for that question. This is not dissimilar to what the dynamics that I think that the rest of California and to some extent some parts of the United States are experiencing. I think it's more challenging here in California for a variety of reasons. I would say that the approach that I'm trying to lead with is compassion and order. So lead with compassion and give folks every opportunity to enter into programs, hopefully on their own volition, with compassion to get them into housing, into treatment, to provide the support that they need. As you know, some individuals, as you pointed out, may be suffering from mental illness or may be addicted. And so they're quote unquote dual diagnosis or have a variety of different challenges. And, there were some changes in state law. Many of you may or may not voted for Prop 1, but it did reallocate some of the mental health funding towards housing. I see at the end of the day, you saw as part of my slide presentation, we have a housing first. The best way, clinically that, and the data shows this, that we can stabilize individuals and get them out from the grips of addiction or mental illness is to get them stabilized in four walls. And unfortunately, there is, a connection between affordable housing and the availability of housing to get people off the streets. When individuals decide that they don't want to get into housing or refuse, we're likely going to see this next year, some changes in terms of conservatorship, in terms of the ability for families or loved ones or the police department or other mental health professionals to be able to intervene and quote unquote conserve individuals. And push them into treatment or to alternative programs. Many of you have probably heard about Care Court, which will be an alternative. We were not the first tranche of the 58 counties to see the implementation of Care Court. We are going to undergo the implementation this next year. How that will turn out, I don't know. I think it's kind of remains to be seen. And I would say that when individuals, at least from my experience, if you're engaging in criminal behavior in communities or engaging in conduct that none of us in this room are able to do, then we have law enforcement that is, in my estimation, be prepared to help provide the necessary alternative services, whether that be time in jail, to rehabilitate themselves and hopefully get them on the right path.
Derek, hi, Susan Kirsch. I'm so glad you could be here today, and thank you for giving us this broad picture of all of the complexity that you're dealing with. And commendations to the Marin Coalition for this venue, because I think this is a really nice setting and a good alternative. So for years, I've been involved with housing issues for Marin County and now including housing issues throughout the state. And one of the things that I noticed in your slide presentation around housing is that there were 4 mentions of housing in a context of calling it affordable housing. And I want to just say that what I've found over the years is that many people are using affordable, that adjective before housing, which is something that all of us agree with, that there should be affordability at any level of income. But the great problem that we're facing is that we have this growing discrepancy between wage and salary workers who, as you pointed out, are making $18 an hour in Marin County. But the huge the huge way in which wealth is being accumulated into the hands of fewer and fewer people who, through state California laws, are making it more and more expensive to build any housing. So what we're getting in this county and throughout the state is not affordable housing. We're getting market rate housing. And we need to come to grips with the fact that affordable is a very friendly, soft word that we all like, but that's not what the state policies are bringing onto us. So I'm just curious if you have any comments about how Marin can do a better job of making sure we're getting affordable for the person making $18 an hour to live in the county.
Yeah, thank you for those points, and you know, I agree with some of them. I do agree that the state's prescription does not necessarily mean that we're getting affordable housing. When I say affordable housing, I'm talking about deed restricted housing that is targeted at, you know, certain segments, income segments that are defined under federal and state law. And, you know, I think it's fair to say it was the same where I came from, which are fairly affluent communities, whether it's Santa Barbara or San Luis Obispo. You know, density doesn't mean affordability. And that may work in, you know, maybe 40 or 50 other counties in the state of California. That's not necessarily the same here in Marin. We know how much condos and multifamily units can rent for or can sell for with absent any sort of deed restrictions. So the sites that I mentioned, these sites, to large extent, you know, they are producing, you know, some amount of affordability. They're not all 100%. I think Marinwood, I think, is 100% affordable. Marin City is not all 100 affordable, and it depends. And as you pointed out, is that the state's prescription is you can provide a minimal amount of affordability, and then you are entitled to essentially what is called a ministerial project. A ministerial project meaning that there is little to no discretion afforded to a local agency as long as you abide by all the objective and applicable standards. And so you are correct, you know, there is a mix, and the state has deemed that formula is the formula that is right for all 485 cities, 58 counties in terms of how we want to approach affordable housing. And so what can we do? You know, I think I think that some of the things that the Board of Supervisors has done. So, you know, the $50 million that we've set up to augment the funding, in addition to tax credits and the kind of the financial stack, is that once we start to be able to provide financial funding, then we have more discretion in terms of what we can do in terms of dictating the outcomes of projects. So, for example, in Marinwood, they'll be coming to the Board of Supervisors on December 17th, requesting some funding. In that instance, you know, while we understand that there's prescribed densities and allowances and concessions that need to be made for the affordable housing project, we're also asking for the developer to humanize the roadway, to make good streetscapes, to do placemaking, so that we can, to the extent we can, to try to integrate these projects into the community so they don't stick out and otherwise detract from the character. So those are some of the examples of what we're approaching. There are other examples, you know, the Oak Hill project, where I think we've, you know, partnered with the state of California and built some affordable housing, 100% affordable housing on state lands that is separate and distinct from, you know, communities. We did a project that many of you may know about in West Marin, associated with the Coast Guard station, where we're repurposing many of that housing out there. Those are the type of innovative projects that I think we need to continue to work towards. But I don't think, Susan, we can get to the point where we can otherwise get away from the state's prescription of a mix of, you know, affordable and market rate housing overall.
We have a question over here.
Hi, I too am from Fairfax, and I serve on the board of the Marin Symphony. And we're suffering due to the closure of the Veterans Memorial Auditorium, which is a real jewel for all of us. So can you comment a little bit more about the timing of this situation? We're the main tenant there.
Yeah, and my apologies. Right as I got here, I got word that the promises that we made in terms of timing couldn't be fulfilled, because as we did exploratory work under that building, we discovered more things that we couldn't just cover back up. Namely that as the building sunk, all the drainage, given the kind of dome structure was essentially all the drainage, went underneath the building. Well, every time it rained, the orchestra pit was filling up. We thought first, well, it's filling up because there must be water coming from the side. Well, it had actually crushed all the drains, and so the drains were no longer functioning. So the water that was coming from the roof was filling up the orchestra pit. So in addition to that, we've discovered a parade of other issues. And back in 1972 that building was built? Yeah, 1972. My grandparents were at the original ribbon cutting with Frank Lloyd Wright back when the Civic Center was built. I don't know if they were there for the VMA. But the as-built for that building are pretty much non-existent. We feel at this point we've scoped all of the structural and systems issues that need to be addressed, at least to return the shell of the building and make it safe to go back into. As I pointed out, the real question for me is if it's going to be closed, and we believe it's going to be till sometime in 2026. Do we do more? Do we replace the carpet? Do we replace the audio and the video? What about the seating? So it's a little bit of, the sunk cost fallacy that we're in of trying to chase a lot of these costs. But as you pointed out, it is a gem, and I think it is worth the investment. And I want to make sure if we're going to make these investments, it's something that, is paid forward for future generations. So sorry, and I wish I had better news, but I'm a little bit of a realist and I'd rather give you the honest and truthful answer. And I know we're trying to work with our partners, to allow for performances and on the campus while this facility is being rehabilitated.
So while we're all thinking of our last questions here, I had a question about something that you referred to earlier, and I don't know if everybody's read about this yet or not, but the hack into the housing authority system that led to the theft of close to $1 million from that agency, if I have my facts right. Obviously, that's a pretty disturbing phenomenon. I guess it shouldn't surprise us because everybody's getting hacked all over the place, all over the world by other people all over the world. That's just kind of the electronic age that we live in. But it was surprising to see a government agency fall susceptible to that and in such a huge amount. Do you see this as a trend? Is this a one-off that we won't see again, or is this the shape of the future that we have to get ready for?
Great question. Unfortunately, cities like Atlanta, I think Dallas, there's a pretty long list of jurisdictions, like in Oakland. I think Atlanta paid, was it about $80 million to liberate all of their data. So first I should point out the Marin Housing Authority is not an entity of the county. So they are a separate entity, but nevertheless, we're a fiduciary. And so they have complete control over their IT systems, HR. Their board is the same board of supervisors, but the administration of that agency is handled by a different team. Nevertheless, this was quite shocking when we learned of it. And it became apparent to me that there were more safeguards that needed to be put in place, similar to the safeguards that we have at the County of Marin. So we have dual authentication. We have an entire security team. We have protocols for wiring and transfer of dollars that require human voice and validation, even though the hackers are getting better and they now are, with AI, are able to duplicate people's voices. So we're trying to figure out, well, what is the next thing we need to do to put in place? But this was fairly alarming, given the acute need for affordable housing funds and seeing the public's dollars siphoned off. We of course coordinated with the FBI and other agencies to try to claw back the dollars, but to no avail. It's more common than what people know, but nevertheless, it's not acceptable. And that's why we're taking this hard look at this agency.
Okay, question over here.
Thank you, Derek. Welcome to Marin. My name is John Wright. I used to be on the San Anselmo Town Council. So I'm glad you moved there. It's a great city. While I was over there, I spent several years on the Flood Zone 9 Advisory Board, and I wanted to just ask you as you come in, you mentioned a little bit about flooding down in Marin City, but at least in Flood Zone 9 and my time on that council, I would say that the county didn't exactly cover itself in glory in the watershed projects in San Jacinto Creek. And I witnessed a lot of that, up close, a lot of turnover in county staff, different leadership. I never felt that they were getting a lot of help from the county to actually get that stuff done. And I wonder what you think you might bring to that, and is that going to be on your list of topics to look at in your first period of time here?
Yeah. Thank you for that question as well. There was one project in the Ross Valley that, whether you like it or not, it is going to have a benefit, which is the retention basin, just above the town of Fairfax. We haven't seen it used, fortunately, but should it become necessary to be used, I think it's, is it a 5 or 10 year? I think it's a 5 or 10 year flood event. Will actually have the water over top and retain water, which will help the rest of the Ross Valley. I would say that your assessment is accurate. We have not made the type of progress and promises that we made to the San Anselmo and Ross Valley, specifically as it relates to building Bridge 2. We're in the process right now of recalibrating our efforts with FEMA and making sure that we have an accurate model that complies with their requirements and then in turn provides the necessary mitigations. At least to my satisfaction, I believe that that project will provide a tremendous amount of benefit to over hundreds of property in terms of reducing flood levels. And there nevertheless is going to be a few projects where there'll be de minimis impacts that we need to address. And then we're having conversations with FEMA right now on how to do that. I'd say the problems in our flood control extend to some other areas. Santa Benicia, we've had a levee there that we've been unable to move forward with for a variety of reasons. And so I'm trying to recalibrate the team to take a different approach and bringing some new team members on to look at the strategies there. Talia Smith, who's here tonight, she just most recently met with some of our state partners, looking at potentially state sources to move that project along. So we've got a lot of work to do, and I think we've collected a lot of tax dollars, and we've got to deliver on some promises that we've made.
Question over here.
Hi, I'm Clint Kellner, husband of Madeline. I'm wondering how you structure your meetings such that you know all of this information that we're asking you in such great detail.
Tonight, there was a tip jar as we walked in, and I paid everyone off so that they lobbed some softballs. I love this profession. I mean, ever since I started this job, well, even before I started, I've been doing my homework back in the fall of 2023 when Matthew Hymel announced his retirement. So I've been a scholar, student of reading all of the board packets and materials and gleaning the websites. I don't watch TV, so that helps with time, and I do a lot of reading at nighttime, and I've got great staff like Talia who brief me and keep me up to speed. And then I think a sense of meeting with the community and understanding what's important to you, because that's ultimately what my job is to both serve the board and serve the community and make sure we're working on the right things. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your presentation, Kevin Haggerty. What effect do you think the change in national administration will have on the county?
That's a great question as well. I've a lot of good questions here tonight, even though the technology didn't slow you all down. So I think it's uncertain. I think that Marin has its values. I think we need to live our values of making sure we're serving our community and that we're inclusive and caring, and that we work towards preserving our environment and addressing climate change. Our state, if you've been reading the local newspaper, the Marin Independent Journal has been doing a fairly good job on covering both the governor's comments and Senator McGuire on what the state is doing to position California. I think probably one of the biggest areas will be, in terms of what we'll see in terms of changes in funding to our health and human services. Fortunately, Matthew Hymel left our county in a very good fiscal position. So we have a variety of reserves to be able to get to a glide path if there are adjustments made to federal entitlements or other programs by the Trump administration. I think in other areas, it may be the state of California as the tip of the spear in terms of jousting with the federal government on any impacts to California. And I think we're fortunate enough that I think today, our community, for the most part, there's a fair amount of, I would say, agreement in general about the direction that Marin wants to go. And so we can have good civic discussions about the best policies to make sure that we're working towards the benefit of Marin County residents. So I can't say today what that crystal ball is going to show. I was, working as a city manager during the last Trump administration. Probably less impacts at a city level, more you see them at a county level, largely because of health and human services and more funding related to law and justice. So we'll have to remain to be seen. I know that a lot of our immigrant communities are very concerned. I read a 2017 staff report, which was surprising to me that Marin County has nearly 16,000 undocumented persons who live in our communities. And that is a sizable amount of our workforce. I mean, these are the people in our community that provide a range of services. And so, I can't imagine what our community would be like if we were to lose 16,000 people who serve this community. And nevertheless, we're thinking about and trying to imagine what those possibilities might be and what are the steps that reasonably a county can take. As a local government versus citizens and NGOs, should we see any sort of impact to Marin County?
Question here from Pam.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I'm currently on the Marin County CRA Executive Committee. I'm also a former planning commissioner for Fairfax, and I'm elected on the Ross Valley Sanitary District. My question is about open space. Recently, I learned more and more that open space may be sold for housing. And I'm wondering what you know or don't, it's okay, if you don't know, but I'm concerned, especially with the county, because you are a large entity. And I'm starting to look around to see if that's happening, so you can put a conservation easement. As I think one of the people in Sausalito contacted me and went out and looked at a piece of property that the town was thinking about selling for housing, but fortunately, the people of that town had paid for it on a vote. So that to me was protected. But anyway, that's where I'm at. If you know of anything of that nature, thank you.
So I'll be as clear as I can. There are no known areas, at least of county-owned open space, where we're contemplating selling it for any types of housing or development. Most of the open space that the county is acquired through our Parks and Open Space District funded through Measure A, all of that is deed restricted. So it's deed restricted in perpetuity for limited use. In many cases, as you probably know, the county uses Measure A dollars to not only buy property in fee, meaning that we own it, many times we buy at conservation or ag conservation easements, which really provides compensation to the landowner to continue those ag operations in perpetuity. I think, what you've pointed out is, I think that's consistent with our values. I can't imagine that ever changing, and there would be too many hurdles to overcome that. But that, you know, because of that map that I showed you of how much land is preserved, and those are the special places that I have not talked to a single person in our county that says we should do something different about that. That does, of course, mean that when we talk about housing, it's gonna put extra pressure on our urbanized areas, you know, whether they're cities or our unincorporated communities. And so this is not dissimilar in the conversation in San Luis Obispo. We had 35,000 acres of open space surrounding the city. We had the same mandates, and we turned our attention to what can we do with these state mandates to make better communities. And I would say that we were able to do that largely through some very judicious planning and engagement to the women in the back with our planning commission to make sure that they were bringing forward the best ideas that were a good fit for their community.
All right, we're getting toward the end. If there's any last minute ones, we might still squeeze you in. Otherwise, I think we can wrap up. And I'm just curious, who's better prepared for today's presentation, Derek or you guys? I mean, these are amazing questions.
Amazing questions.
Yes, all right. So I'm just going to say one last thank you to Derek for an incredible job. And we're at the end of our time, so we'll have happy hour now, and
Okay.
there you go, you're all set.
And I've got a gift for the board. I think I've got 5, I think, we've done a little, we've put together some swag. These are some, little, gifts for all of you, for your board members. So
Oh,
thank
thanks.
you much for inviting us. We
Gosh.
very much appreciate it. Thank you very much.
We are charmed and delighted and thankful. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thank you.
All right, Derek Johnson. Boy, who thought we would learn all of this today? This was terrific. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your great questions, Derek. Amazing presentation. And anyone who missed it, get it on our archives page tomorrow or the next day. Thanks very much.
And would you be available within the next